It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this. Welcome to another tier ranking. I'm going to have my good friend Mike Minotti explain to us what we're doing this time.
Well, this is core Zelda games, right? So, which is less contentious than core Mario games, at least in terms of what makes a Zelda game. Unless you're just real weird and want Link's crossbow training in there or something, or the Tingle games. I don't know, but
I was,
yeah, we have.
I mean, like you did include stuff like the Four Swords games, so those are core. Do you want to explain your thinking there?
Yeah. Well, they're in the timeline, right? Those games get represented in that official timeline, at least, which
Huh,
means
okay,
something to me, I
that's
guess.
fair. Yeah,
The most dubious one, I guess, is the first Four Swords because it was sort of packaged in with the version of Link to the Past for Game Boy Advance. The best comparison to that now is Bowser's Fury and how it was just kind of thrown into a port of a 3D world, right? And
Bowser's
I was
Fury is a
already
core Mario, though, right?
that's what I'm thinking. I think it is, but it's going to be a kind of a weird thing now. Yeah, like
Yeah.
people are going to wonder about it. But yeah, so that's what I kind of compared that to Bowser's Fury, Four Swords. But we have 5 tiers here. I just kind of did these based off of rupees in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So you have gold, silver, purple, red, blue,
Very
and
good.
yeah. So obviously, gold is S, blue is whatever letter that would be in the bottom there. And there's not like any terrible Zelda games, right?
That's right.
But there are like the ones that are the worst, I suppose, in the
Yeah.
series. So we'll have a few
It's
down there.
You always do a good job of naming the categories. It's another good one. I'm not going to feel bad about putting a Zelda game in blue. That's for sure. So I think we'll be able
Sure.
to, yeah, we'll be able to, I think again, spread these things across the entire spectrum. And that's what makes this sort of practice fun. Should we hop right in? We've already put these Zelda games in order. And I think just people watching along, I know the icons are pretty small. We're going to do our best to like say the name of the game we're talking about a lot as we're talking here so that you can follow along.
Yeah, for like the first, there's like 3 games in a row that basically have the same box art too, which was fun and logo. So good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into it. Zelda 1 on the NES.
Yeah, so Legend of Zelda is I said this when we were doing the Mario's Super Mario Brothers, very important to me. I love it. I think more than most people, and I think I am the exact same way with the Legend of Zelda. It was a game that I watched my older brothers play. I don't think they ever beat it, but they were really into it. And then as I got older, I tried it and I really enjoyed it. But then I went back years later and finally like played it for real as once I was probably a teenager. And I love this game. I really, really do. But I understand why to some people this isn't quite the Zelda formula sort of perfected, and so why it would probably fall down from gold. But for me, it's in that top half for sure.
Yeah, top half for sure. I mean, there's always so much baggage with these first games, right? I mean, it's Legend of Zelda. It's one of the most important games
Yeah.
of all time. I like played it as a kid, but again, it was a bit beyond me to beat it. I only like played through the entire thing and beat it when it came out on the Switch Online service, right? But yeah, and I still had a lot of fun with it. It is still great. It still feels very good. Like the way it looks. It is it is interesting how this one is more open than a lot of the later entries become. It's just a matter. I want to put it in the tippy top just because there are future games that are very similar to it but better, just in a bit
Yeah,
more refined.
yeah, and like I think they did eventually perfect this idea of what a Zelda game could be way down the line, and we'll talk about that. But I will say that I really like that this game captures what Miyamoto was going for, and it was you're stumbling out in the wilderness and you find a cave and then you go explore the cave, and this game was definitely like trying to channel that stuff, and it does a very good job. It's it's not handholdy, but it's also not obtuse.
It can sometimes be slightly obtuse with some of the
it could be slightly unfair.
The bombs is the obtuse part. The times where you need to just like put a bomb in a random wall and hope it blows up.
Yeah, and then there's a few things hidden behind a bush, but I think that it's not as signposted as games will eventually get, but there is like some suggestive stuff in like the way the levels are designed, so that you'd be like, maybe there is something off about this bush.
And there's the old men that like give you hints, and some of that isn't as clear as it should be just because of localization issues. If it was just like a gameplay thing, maybe I'd say purple, but there's so much context here that probably has to put it into silver, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Zelda.
Yes, it's the Legend of Zelda, and it's great. And I mean, we have another game right here that around the same time, The Adventures of Link, Zelda 2. That is, it's going to be, it's a tough one for me to rank because I understand a lot of people really do like it. It's also the most different of all the Zelda games for the most part. And I kind of want to reward that, but I personally have just never connected with this game.
This is another one I only played through very recently on the Switch, and I really did finally kind of get it when I really sat down and devoted some time and energy to it. It is really fun. I like the basic 2D combat actually feels very good. It's
Yes,
totally a
that's true.
game that you need save states for, I think, to really appreciate, because it just becomes very frustrating without it. Because it is very hard, and the punishment for dying when you're on a game over is severe. You do a lot of backtracking after that. I wouldn't put it in the very bottom tier. I know some people like just dislike it a lot because it is so different.
Yeah, but I don't want to punish it for being different.
Zelda 1.
Yeah, this
I
is
don't punish it for being different.
Yeah, I think Red is probably right. This is there's definitely like it's a cool format. The other games, like there's an Adventure Time game that basically is just the Adventures of Link, and that game works, and it kind of really made me want to go back and try the Adventures of Link again. But yeah, there's some people who swear by this game, so yeah, I don't. It's just because I think it hasn't connected with me, and I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it when you played it. I think Red is probably fair.
I wish that this was almost one that would make a kind of new version of. Heck, if there's a Zelda game to remake, this would be kind of a fun one to do.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I know that team that did that Metroid remake on the 3DS is probably working on another 2D Metroid. But if they weren't, this game would be ideal.
That'd be pretty cool. Someday, I'm sure someday they're going to run out of Zelda games to remake, and they'll get to it.
Yes, I think you're right. Okay, so that does it for the NES games. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, though, that's this is a big one.
Yeah, this is the one that I first really fell in love with. Like, there's I was actually playing this game as a kid. I'm sure I must have beat it back then. I've beaten it many times since then. It's probably the Zelda game I played through the most amount of times. Just because like every 5 years or so, I can go back to it, and it still is just absolutely fantastic. It's a bit more handholdy than Zelda 1, but in a pleasant way, because there is, not that the story is necessarily good, but it's satisfying, right? It's very classic. And the whole Light World, Dark World thing was surprisingly innovative for, way back then. We see so many games basically just copy that same formula now. Like, oh, there's two worlds, and you go between the two. That stuff happens all the time now.
Yeah, it is. I think people call it like the ideal Zelda, and I think that's right. I think for most people, when they think of what a Zelda game should be, this is the one that really defined it. And it's also timeless. Like you said, you could go back to it every 5 years and really just just play it again anew, and it still feels like a really good video game right now today in a way that is very hard. Even a lot of Super Nintendo games hold up really well. This is probably one of those that holds up even better than most. And a lot of it's got really great pacing. It moves forward. When things start to get stale, then they introduce the Dark World, and things just stay fresh the entire time you're playing. And yeah, I mean, it's not my number one or number two Zelda personally, but I still love it. It's still one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, and just think, looking at this list, this is the formula that basically every Zelda game follows until Breath of the Wild, right? Like that's how well they kind of nailed it here.
And it's it goes even like further than that. It like is a video game defining formula where Super Metroid doesn't have dungeons, but has a lot of the same ideas as A Link to the Past, where you are exploring this connected map, and as you get more tools, you are able to access more parts of the map. And they just switched the camera perspective. Basically, it is Nintendo discovering like what a video game should feel like in general overall, and for that part, I mean, obviously it's a gold tier game.
Yeah, it's a gold tier. It might be like among my least. It might be like my least favorite in the gold tier, and if gold tier gets really crowded, maybe I don't know, but I think it definitely should be in there. We'll see. I know.
We'll see.
Because I know how much you like Link's Awakening, and I feel like you're not going to settle for anything but top tier on that.
Correct. One. So that we just talked about Link to the Past. Now let's talk about Link's Awakening, which came out on the Game Boy after A Link to the Past, and it really benefited from that, I think. So they learned a lot of the lessons that they learned from A Link to the Past, but then then they also combine really sort of creepy and mysterious storytelling and suggestive, like they suggest a lot of
Whimsical too.
yeah, it's whimsical, but it's also like it also feels like slightly eerie. This island that you are discovering, and every time you uncover a little bit more about the story, it's just like, oh, there's something weird happening here, and it gives this whole adventure this really Twilight Zone-esque vibe that super worked for Zelda. You know, because you are like, it is like you throw yourself into this adventure, and you're trying to discover this place, but like, what if the place was also just kind of odd and there was something happening with it that you needed to find out. And on top of that, this is the one where Link's Awakening was the one that like really established the series as hugely about puzzle solving. Link to the Past had a lot of that stuff, but each boss in Link's Awakening was such a puzzle, and I remember getting stuck on the number 2 dungeon boss for a long time because my little baby brain at like 10, 11 years old just couldn't understand that. Like, I couldn't just hit it with a sword. I needed to use the tool to like pick him up and throw him against the wall. It took me so long to figure out, oh, I'm supposed to use the thing I just got to actually beat this boss. And then once that clicked, it's like, again, oh, this is how video games are supposed to work. The game is trying to teach me something, and I'm supposed to use that lesson, and I'm probably going to use it on the boss of that dungeon. Yeah, I adore this game. It is easily one of my favorites, period, of all time.
What I think is really kind of interesting is that a lot of the big Nintendo franchises that came to Game Boy came with a lot of compromises, or were more similar to their NES counterparts, right? Like Metroid 2 is nowhere near Super Metroid in terms of like quality. Mario Land 1 is nowhere near Mario World. Even Mario Land 2 wasn't near that. Link's Awakening is pretty close to Link to the Past in terms of
really is,
like gameplay, presentation, all that stuff. It's just on Game Boy.
I mean, it has it has cutscenes that are better than the Super Nintendo version. Like, yeah, like it's like some of like the little story sequences that they do when you're talking to Marin on the beach or whatever. That stuff was gorgeous, even on the original Game Boy. Not like the Game Boy Color version or the eventual Switch remake. Even in the original Game Boy, it looked fantastic, and it was very much whisking you away to this place.
I don't like it quite as much as you, but I also don't have anything bad to say about it, really. So
yeah, I mean, for me, like, it's always in the conversation for my favorite game of all time, my top 3 period, all games. So yeah, it's got to go in gold for me. Yeah. All right, so that was Link's Awakening. We are gonna move on to Ocarina of Time now, which. Are we gonna? I can't tell. Are we gonna make people mad about this one? Because I know, like, for some people, this is absolutely the best game of all time, and for me, I'm like, this was the best game of its time, and there's a difference for me. But I don't know. I want to hear what you think.
It's this was the one I was dreading too, but because I really like Ocarina of Time.
Same.
I think it's absolutely one of the most important games ever. It's just like isn't one of my favorites for whatever reason. And I don't know why. But it's Ocarina of Time, right?
I just don't want to go back to it anymore, Mike. It's like
I could maybe go back. I think I feel like I like it more than you do.
Yes. So I listen. I like this game a lot. I loved it when I played it, but it's like it was like the song of the summer, where I listened to it so much that I'm like, okay, I am done with that now. And Ocarina of Time, I loved it so much, so hard for many years. And then eventually it just got to a point where it's like, I had my time with that game, and I have since had better Zelda experiences with other games, and I don't necessarily need to go back to it again. Now, I think I did try on the 3DS, and I bounced off, actually. So
I played through it on the 3DS, and I still like really appreciate it and like the game, and
I still like it. It's just.
We can't go lower than silver.
I agree with that. That's fine. Yes, like this is.
I feel like it should maybe be gold, anyways. Like almost in spite how I personally feel about it. But if you're less plussed about than I am, maybe it's silver.
My point is just that I think it established the formula in 3D. I just don't know if it necessarily holds up as a top tier Zelda experience today, and that's why I think it was well done.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I mean, compared to a lot of the other, like, I would rather play this than say Twilight Princess or even Skyward Sword. I suppose, not to jump the gun here, right? Like, I think it's still in that upper half of the 3D Zelda games.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I guess, I mean, in terms of 3D Zeldas, I think you're probably right, but like, I would like, I mean, we'll get there. But A League Between Worlds, I think was like
yeah.
so much better. And like I'm going to play a Zelda game, man.
Like the gold might be really crowded anyway. So think of Silver as like so like the games we put in Silver can still be among the best games. I mean, hell, Zelda 1 is in Silver.
Yes,
so
and it's
Ocarina of Time
easily. And I think Zelda 1 also in like the top 100 games of all time period sort of situation. Ocarina of Time better than that. Yeah.
Maybe the only difference between gold and silver is just the ones we happen to like more. Like they're obviously all very incredible, all-time great games and important.
And listen, the comments are there for a reason, people. Yell at us.
Yeah.
Yell at us. That's what they're there for.
Yeah. The Mass Effect one did well, but some people were mad, mostly because I thought a character was gay who wasn't.
Listen, I think that says more about the character than anything else. We couldn't remember him.
Yeah. Sorry about Vega.
Yeah.
I could swear, but I'm excited to play it again now and see why I was getting those vibes.
You'd be like, oh man, I really love this character now. I messed up. That's what everyone kept telling me. And it's like, I'm going to be like, what have I done? All right. So then we have the two Oracle Zelda games on the Game Boy Color, right? These were Game Boy Color games?
Game Boy Color. Yeah, we could talk about them together.
So yeah, the Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. And of course, I picked Ages because I like time travel, but everyone swears by the Seasons game, and I've never really played Seasons.
They're closer in quality than you might expect. Of course, people want to pick one. So Seasons is a bit more... I want to make sure I get this right, because one is more combat focused, the other one is more puzzle focused, even though they both have a mix of the two.
Sure.
I think Seasons is more puzzle focused, so you would probably like that one more. And it is the more interesting kind of hook, right? Because we've done time travel before. Ocarina of Time was just a bit before this. But Seasons was cool because you had the Rod of Seasons, and you can actually change the seasons with that, and it would open up different areas. There'd be a snow mound in winter, and then in spring it would melt away, stuff like that. So gameplay-wise, nearly identical to Link's Awakening. Not quite as memorable as that game. It's a little, Johnny-come-lately. But I like these both a lot still. They're still very fun 2D Zelda games.
Yeah, I was I was so in love with Link's Awakening at this time that when I tried these, I was just disappointed that I wasn't getting the exact same feelings I got when I was playing Link's Awakening. And I think that's just something people go through with a franchise like Zelda, where you have the one that you played when you were 11, 12, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to match that with the other Zelda games, and nothing ever really quite matches that. I'm not going to hold that against these games. I think I beat Ages, and I remember enjoying it quite a bit. I just didn't, but it's definitely not as memorable. And
they don't have any of like the elements that stand out as like some incredible wow factor, or just
these ones were developed by Capcom, right?
These are the first Capcom ones, correct?
So I think that might have also tainted it for me as well, because I was like learning like at the time, like I was like, oh, this isn't the exact team that made the last Zelda game I liked. So it might have like tainted it in my memory a little bit. But I mean, Capcom has made other good Zelda games as well. So and these games were good. But I think they might be our purples though. But I don't know if you want to put them in silver. I'll hear it.
No, I don't want to put them in silver. I think purple is good enough for them. I like them a lot. There's just nothing incredibly spectacular about them. But there's nothing wrong with them either.
And you're okay with them both being purple, right? You don't want to split them up?
I'll probably agree with people that Seasons is a bit better, but I don't think it's that much of a difference.
Here's an interesting one. Zelda Majora's Mask. This is like one of our first sort of direct sequels a little bit, but it's also very different. I like this game. Absolutely, I do. But I also remember being stressed by the 3-day timer thing. And that might have maybe spoiled it for me a little bit.
I could not get into this one until the 3DS version. I think part of it was because I realized stressing out about the timer thing was just me not really understanding it. Like you kind of had to get over. But I think the 3DS version also made it less stressful too. Yeah,
they made edits to it like they always do, and they definitely made some improvements. It is the best version of that game to play. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I like Majora's Mask. Like some people, this is like one of those entries that has some people like, no, this is the best one.
Yep.
And I get that because it is a bit different. It is also like the best in terms of just kind of not like an acid flip, but this game is reusing a lot of things from Ocarina of Time to make an experience that is similar but also very different. The focus here though is much more on that kind of like townsperson, almost the adventure game elements of like not dungeon puzzle solving, but the sort of like I need to talk to this villager and get this item from him and help that person over there, which is necessarily my favorite part of the Zelda franchise.
Yeah.
But if you're somebody who loved just walking around Kakariko Village, this is basically like, what if that was most of the game?
Right, but my favorite part is always the like exploring the world. One of my favorite parts in this game was, even on the 3DS version, you still had to sort of put that stuff on the back burner because you needed to figure out the next step in the process of solving the problem in front of you, so that you could accomplish something before the timer reset.
It does have some of that Link's Awakening energy of just being weird, though, in a kind of fun, unsettling way.
And that definitely works for me. It's unsettling, and I think that Zelda games are cool when they're unsettling, and this one definitely leans into that. It might be the most unsettling of all of them. But yeah, I don't know. This, for me, I think I probably want to put this one in purple as well.
I was also thinking purple.
Okay, let's just do that then.
I don't love it as much as some people, but I do like it.
Yes, I think that's exactly where I'm feeling it. Now, here's an obvious gold: Four Swords, not Four Swords Adventure,
Four Swords
right?
Adventure, just Four Swords.
Yeah. So this, you were explaining to me before we started that I've forgotten this. This was like packed in with the Game Boy Advance version of Link to the Past. Is that what it was?
Yeah, when they ported Link to the Past to Game Boy Advance, it came with this, and yeah, it's basically kind of like Bowser's Fury being part of a Super 3D World when they brought the Switch. It's the same motivation. Like, well, we got to add something new.
So is this the game that does this have the one where you hook it up to the GameCube, or is this the one where you?
This is just
Game
Link
Boy
cable. Advanced Link cables,
okay.
Which was a detriment at the time. Although they did release it on the 3DS, and you could just play it there, and it was pretty nice. But yeah, this is the first of many of these kind of multiplayer Zelda games. And the concept did work immediately. It was fun. I think another one's going to do it better. It is interesting because it is like a timeline game, right? Like, that's why I still consider it cool, right? It's in that timeline. Also, it's the first time we see Vati, who is maybe my favorite Zelda villain. I love Vati.
I mean, it's just inherently hurt because I couldn't really fully enjoy this game because I didn't have a lot of friends who had Game Boy Advances.
I had two brothers who also liked Zelda a lot. Even then, like, we weren't able to play this game a ton. It was hard for us all to be like, all right, let's like get the link cables out.
Yeah, I think during the the Game Boy Advance time, I was just getting out of high school. I was graduating, and so I wasn't even living at home anymore. So I think my brother didn't have a Game Boy Advance. So even if I was around him a lot, it's not like he would be able to play with me because he just wasn't quite as into games as I was. So yeah, it was just like I remember being disappointed that I never really got the full Four Swords Adventure experience, and so it kind of was like I'm just going to choose to try
just Four Swords.
What's that? Yeah. I'm just going to pretend this game doesn't really exist and try not to like think about it too much because otherwise I'll just be kind of bitter about it. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd have to trust your judgment on this one.
It's not higher than Red. I mean, even like I played through it, I think a couple times. I don't remember anything about it too much. I will say that there's going to be a game like it that is noticeably worse. So maybe that gets it in Red at least.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Yeah. I mean, it still has that Link to the Past art style, and that works for it for the most part. Pretty close to that anyhow.
Yeah, it's Link to the Past mixed with Wind Waker, which is basically exactly what they're going to do with Minish Cap, also.
Right. All right. Yeah. Here's another big one for me. The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker for GameCube. I love this game. I loved it on GameCube. I think the edited version that they did on Wii U was even better because they like cut down some of the travel time when it came to the end of the game.
Yeah, the part where you're hunting for the Triforce shards was edited a bit.
But this game is just another timeless Zelda game. What do you think?
This is my favorite. This is my absolute favorite Zelda game. This is the one that when I was playing through it, I was just awestruck by it. I loved that art style. I mean, I remember playing the demo of it at GameStop for the first time and just being so in love with how the game looked. Some of my favorite dungeons in the series, especially like the light dungeon and the wind dungeon towards the end of the game. Like the only thing you could think bad about it is when you find out that two dungeons were kind of like cut and you think about like, oh yeah, that game is kind of missing a couple dungeons, but that wasn't something I was really thinking at the time. it's my favorite ending to any Zelda game. That final boss fight with Ganondorf is
Yes,
super cool and
fantastic.
super epic. Yeah.
Yes.
You're right. The Wii U version is great. The only thing I wish the Wii U version did was get orchestrated music in there, because the like the soundtrack is good, but the quality of it, like the MIDI versions, does not sound that has not aged very well, especially with the newer games with orchestrated music and all that.
I mean, I know you like. When did this game come out? Was it
2003? I think it was supposed to come out like 2002, and it ended up coming out 2003. So 2002 or 2003.
It's so weird how close to like the beginning of the internet this game came out, because when I think about it, it is such the internet response. And like for younger people that might have come to this stuff late, you've probably heard this stuff before. But when they showed this game off the first time, and if you're it's got the cartoony Zelda style. World. Yes, it was just people hated it. They wanted a mature Zelda. They wanted the realistic looking Zelda. And a part of that was they showed off what looked like kind of a realistic looking Zelda demo for the GameCube. Yeah, at Nintendo Space World, which is what they did when they weren't kind of not at E3. And the response online was it was hellfire. People were so furious. They wanted their mature Zelda. And so they called it Zelda because it was cel shaded.
Zelda, yeah.
Yeah.
It was mildly clever.
Yeah, mildly clever, right. And it's just, to me, it's like, man, that was like a social media meltdown. And of course, social media hadn't even been invented yet. Like
it was one of the first times that the gamers rised up.
It really was. And I'm glad that didn't like derail this game specifically, because
that they were all wrong, because
they were all wrong.
I actually liked the look immediately, and again,
I was gonna ask, like were you involved, like were you online when all that stuff was happening? And
I think I watched the stream of this reveal on or I saw the trailer very shortly after it debuted on GameSpot or something, back when you got like
GameSpot
that super small video window, right?
What was it, Real Player or whatever, something like that.
Yeah, and this was also back when they used that song from Conan the Barbarian in all of their Zelda trailers for some reason, and it always was like really hyped for me. I loved it, but I fell in love with this almost immediately. Again, I'm not somebody who super loved Ocarina of Time necessarily, and I thought that this art style was incredible. I thought that this looked really, again, I love animated film, so I like, oh man, this looks like a Disney thing. I thought that was was more than what I wanted. I wanted something more fantastical, more kind of fairy tale-esque, brighter and more fun.
I mean, but yeah, you were absolutely right, because I was never I never hated the way this game looked when they first showed it off, but I was definitely like, oh, I guess maybe I was thinking this would be more serious or something like that. And when it came out and I played it, I immediately did. It was like, okay, this does just look like a cartoon in motion. And now you go back to it today, and it might be one of the most timeless looking 3D games ever made.
It looks so good.
Yeah, especially from that era. There's just kind of no other game that matches it in terms of, this just looks like it. You wouldn't make any changes to it now. You want it to look exactly how it looks, because it's just so fluid in motion with the cartoons and Link looking around with his eyes and things.
Aside from that, the way Link's like emoted and looked. But even aside from the aesthetic, the gameplay, I think the combat is better than it was Ocarina of Time. You had these kind of like dodge mechanics that are added in that are super fun.
But like all the characters, like all the NPCs were more memorable. They because they looked better and they emoted more. But then I think that like encouraged the designers to put more into like what you did in the world and your interactions with them.
And I love sailing. I think sailing was super fun. Yep. I think it was better in Wii U when they sped it up a bit and you got that one sail, but I liked it from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of the more narrative intense Zelda games, especially up to this point.
Yeah.
And I think like the pirate crew is an all-time great cast of characters. I think Zelda in this game is maybe the most interesting she's ever been as a character.
Tetra. I love Tetra.
Tetra, yeah.
I almost didn't like when she became Zelda. I liked her more as Tetra.
I'm absolutely agreeing that this should go in gold. So
this is my favorite one. I love Wind Waker.
So, all right, next up is Four Sword Adventures, right? This is
Four Sword Adventures is the one you were thinking of the entire time.
Yes, it was. But I honestly, I also don't really remember this one fully. What was this even on, Mike? Was this
on GameCube? This one was even harder to play than Four Swords, because this is when you needed the Game Boy Advance to GameCube adapters.
What was it called? Connectivity? Is that what they called it?
Yeah, it had that fun Pac-Man game.
Yes, that game's an
And
all-time great for sure.
I mean, it was basically that, this, and Crystal Chronicles, right? Like,
Right, yes.
there were some really weird things they
And
would
then,
do with it.
yeah, these are games that people connected their Game Boy Advance to the GameCube, and then you had a screen on the Game Boy Advance. You could, and also on the TV with the GameCube,
Right.
and they
Now,
called it connectivity, and it was a big. They tried to make it a big deal, and there what, it was fun. The one or two times I ever did it.
I think you could just play this one with GameCube controllers. I think it just like made a screen show up on there. You could also play it by yourself.
Right.
Gosh, I'm not even super sure. I know you could definitely play it by yourself on a GameCube controller. I'm not sure if 4 players you had to get link cables involved or what. But I mean, this one's it's better than Four Swords. It looks really neat because it is that kind of Link to the Past style, but with the Wind Waker particle effects, basically like the cell shaded like smoke and stuff, and it looked nice. But nothing I was ever super plussed about, you know.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the few Zelda games I haven't beaten at all. Also,
Yeah. I don't think I ever really played this one as well. Again, it's just I think when I actually got some friends together and I got my Game Boy Advance and I got the GameCube and got all connected, we did the Pac-Man thing. We did it once, and it was a lot of fun. But it was so much effort. It was like the equivalent of like setting up the VR headset back then. Really the part of that was just like getting all the people together at the same time to do it and convincing everyone like, okay, take time out of your day to sit here with me while we get this going. And so I never really tried to do that with this Zelda game. So, this one you like better than Four Swords.
I like it better. I don't know if I like it a whole tier better than Four Swords.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, maybe another red.
Here's one I really do kind of wish they would bring to Switch, just because again, I kind of want to play through it now, and it'd be easier to do multiplayer now.
Yeah. I was just thinking like imagine if they were bringing like the GameCube games to the Switch and they were adding online functionality like they were doing with some of the NES and SNES games. That would be fantastic for something like this. So I guess
not a bad game. But
yeah, I guess they could just like re-release it like natively and add online. But yeah. Okay, so that was Four Swords Adventures for the GameCube, and then we have The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. This one is a Game Boy Advance game, and this one has like one of the most striking visual styles. I think I really like the way this game looks.
Yeah, it's kind of takes inspiration from Wind Waker, but in the presentation of Link to the Past.
Mm-hmm. And
I like this one a lot.
It's another Capcom game, I think, but it's the
best one.
It's the best one of the Capcom games. I think this is better than Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. It's the Minish in the name refers to like he turns into Mini Link. You can go through like doors, I think, and get really little. I'm having a hard time remembering.
Right, yeah, it's another evolution of the light world, dark world thing.
Yes,
the gimmick here is you can turn small, and then you're
in the mini
small.
World. Yeah,
and they do some. There's like at least one boss fight where you have to literally shrink so you can like go inside his tube or something. It's done pretty well. It's a smart little kind of, as far as the Zelda gimmicks go, and at this point every Zelda had to have its gimmick, right?
Yeah,
I think it was pretty well done. This game has one of my favorite Zelda dungeons. It's like the Sky dungeon towards the end, where the item. So you had Rock's Feather from like Link's Awakening and the Oracle games. Here you got Rock's Cape, which not only did you jump, but you then glided a bit after that.
Huh.
And it was like the whole dungeon like took place in the clouds, like high above the world. And there's just like really nice like layers of pixels there to make it kind of give you that sense of height.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever beat this game, so I don't remember that.
Yeah, the boss fight was against these two flying manta rays, and you kind of jumped back and forth between them. And this game also had the Four Swords in it, and there was a mechanic where you can kind of duplicate yourself because it's tied to those games. This is the game where Vati is the main villain. Yeah, I like this one a lot. I think this is a silver for me.
Okay, yeah, no, I'll trust you because this one I think I played it a lot, and I played it a bunch of times. I started a bunch of times, and I really got through a lot of it, at least one of those times. But I don't think I ever beat it. So, but I think I still like it a lot whenever I play it, though.
Do you have an ambassador program through? Yes.
No, I know I do not. I really regret not having that. Because that and Yoshi's Island were a couple that they gave you as gifts for that, and I wish I had those games on my 3DS. Okay. So now we're at Twilight Princess, and this is the dark, mature Zelda that all the Zelda haters wanted. This game is I remember enjoying this game. I got to the Sky Dungeon, and then someone stole my Wii, and I've never played it through it all again. But I still remember enjoying it quite a lot, and I remember I think that I liked this Link. I don't know, so I don't know if I like the turning into a wolf mechanic, and I think
No, it was fine, but never really did that much
right,
for me.
and it is definitely one of the darker games, I think, in terms of tone, or at least in terms of like visual style, and even like Zelda has like a darker aura about her.
Yeah, I like this Zelda a lot. She's kind of like she's like regal and kind of moody
Yeah,
and sad. I don't
yeah,
yeah. When I think of
yeah,
Zelda, I still almost think of this Zelda.
yeah, and it's again, yeah, it's like very evocative for sure. But it's definitely not gold, and probably not even silver for me though. But what do you think?
This is the one we're starting to get a bit too much talky and handholdy too. This is the one
Yeah,
where the intro really was okay. That was a bit much. Let's get going here. But this is at this point they really knew how to make those 3D Zelda dungeons, and they're all really fun and
they're
interesting
really
here.
good dungeons. Yeah,
Yeah, really good. But there's a bit of the dungeon item that you really only ever use in there, like the Dreidel of Death or whatever it's actually called, right? Like that is like
right.
the biggest example of that ever, where it's this really high concept tool that has basically no use outside of the dungeon. So yeah, I think it's clearly worse than say Wind Waker or even Ocarina of Time, but it's still good. So I think purple is right for Twilight Princess.
All right, now we're getting to the DS games. Phantom Hourglass is what we're going to start with. I don't like these games.
I don't like these games either.
Yeah, Phantom Hourglass was. I think they were both controlled primarily with the touch, with the stylus, right?
Yeah, and that like actually almost worked fine. That wasn't too bad, but
Right.
just design wise, there's that dungeon you keep going back to, and it's kind
Yes.
of annoying. It still has that slower pace carried over from Twilight Princess. It feels like it's just not moving as fast as it should, especially for a portable game.
Yeah.
So you know they're duplicating the Wind Waker art style here, but on much less powerful hardware, so it doesn't look very good.
Right.
The sailing stuff, yeah. Just this is these two. I haven't beaten these two either, and these two and Four Swords Adventures are the only ones. And Four Swords Adventure was kind of a case of just it was a hassle to get going. These two I just wasn't that into.
Yeah, and I think people, I saw someone recently saying, oh, if they just gave us direct control with the Switch version for Phantom Hourglass, that game would be, great. And no, I think it's the structure. I think kind of that, like the dungeon where like you are just trying to get deeper and deeper in this dungeon. You have to go through it each time. It really zaps the pacing. It really makes it feel like you're not making a lot of progress. And I don't like it. I think I would probably put both.
I like mine. That's about it.
I'll put Phantom Hourglass in blue for sure. But I mean, maybe, well, you know what? Maybe red, because I like Spirit Tracks even less. So,
I was gonna say I like Spirit Tracks a little bit more, but I like trains. I don't necessarily like how controlling this train, but I sound like a child. I like
trains.
I think we should just put them both in blue. I think they're clearly like the worst. I just don't. I think it was just kind of misguided. This was sort of that era where the Zelda games were kind of
trying to find. Yeah, they were trying to find something, and they were striking out a little bit. Okay, both in blue then. So that was Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, both DS games, both in blue. All right, and then now we're on to the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, and there was kind of like a gap, right, between especially between like a big console version and Skyward Sword. So there was a lot of anticipation for this game.
Decent amount of time between Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, because like Twilight Princess was a Wii launch game, and Skyward Sword was like their last big Wii game, right?
Yes. I definitely liked this game a lot at the time, and I think in my estimation it has actually grown. I think that I like this game a bit. I think it's one of the better of the post Wind Waker Zelda games for sure.
Yeah, I've always been a bit of a defender because there was a pretty big backlash to this game, and for reasons I understand. This was definitely where, again, that sort of talky, hand-holdy thing got really out of control. This game has a very long intro, even though it's like kind of enjoyable, and there's some fun characters like Groose, stuff like that. It is a bit much. I think the game somehow feels smaller despite you have that flying thing, because you have this giant area to fly in, but then you basically drop down to one of these three portals that become little subzones. So it doesn't feel as big as Twilight Princess, but the Wii Motion Plus stuff actually was really cool. That worked very well. Swinging the sword around was a lot of fun. They did a good job of creating those dungeon items that you use the motion controls with. It's definitely the best of the motion control heavy focused Nintendo games.
Yeah, I also I like the structure of the world where, so you of course you have the Zelda dungeons, but between the dungeons, like when you were trying to get someplace, as you discovered new areas, they basically took the dungeon concept and brought it out into the open world, and you had to like solve puzzles out there as well. And I love that. That really worked for me. I thought that was a really good idea. It's like some of the strongest stuff in Zelda is these puzzle solving dungeons. Why not like really expand on that in the in the exploration phase? And yeah, I think this is just a really solid Zelda game that if they edit it in the way that they edited Wind Waker, I think it's only going to benefit. And I think this game's going to have a real resurgence in terms of people and their estimation of it.
Both this and Twilight Princess did that weird thing though, where in like each of those big areas, at some point you just had to go around and collect like those seeds or nodes or something. That was filler and bad.
It was filler and bad, but it was and I like remember doing it, and so it's like one of the things I can remember of that game is like taking my time to do that stuff, and that's never great because it wasn't fun at the time, but it also didn't really ruin the experience for me. Like I don't blame people if it did ruin theirs though. I get it. But I don't, this one's tough for me. I think I want to put it in silver, I think, but it's tough.
Man, really good dungeons. I don't know. Because I don't know if I could in good conscience put it in the same tier as Ocarina of Time. I'm going to be honest.
That's fair. That's a really good point.
I think I have to put it in purple at least.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, it's edging up there. It is probably the best of the purple tier, but you're right. It's purple.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I think it is my favorite in the purple tier, but I don't like it as much as Zelda 1, Ocarina of Time, or Minish Cap.
We can put these last 3 games up in gold and just be done, Mike.
One of them does not belong, but
all right, let's just do one by one. All right, so let's start with the Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, which God might just be one of the best games ever made, man.
Came out of nowhere too, because again, the portable Zelda games have been kind of bad for a bit.
Yeah, we weren't expecting like them to like come out with like something. It's like, oh, this is like kind of like a sequel to A Link to the Past, and it's going to be yeah, and it's like, oh, we're it's going to have some like 3D gimmicks to it, but mostly it's just going to be a solid Zelda game. And then you play it, and it's so fast paced. It feels so good. They let you get all of like the items by like borrowing them from the shop and then buying them, and that
actually shook up the formula.
Yeah, they shook up. So you could like start like approaching stuff however you wanted in different orders and stuff like that. But it's just it's so fun to play. And it's so well paced. It is one of those games that if you just pick it up to like try to play it for a little bit, it's really hard to put it down.
Even the required Zelda gimmick of like turning into the drawing and sliding along the walls is very well done.
Yep.
Some of the way that bosses like the boss where you have to like plant yourself into his shield and he doesn't know where you are. That is so great. Oh my God.
Lots of clever stuff in this game, but more than anything else, it's just a solid Zelda. Like it's just it feels good to like to solve these dungeons. It really, I can't get over the speed. I just love how fast Link walks across the world, which makes it really fun to explore. You just want to move this character around, and that makes it great to explore the world. Yeah, I don't know. I love this game.
And the 3D was good. The 3D looked really good. It was really fun how they worked. Yeah, this is top tier for sure.
Without a doubt. I mean, honestly, if I did just rank these games on gameplay, maybe this is number 1. A Link Between Worlds.
It is. I don't know. Meanwhile, though, Triforce Heroes, I didn't like that much when it came out. I think I like it less now. It's somehow worse than the Four Swords games. It's entirely revolved around like the whole teepee mechanic thing where you're just kind of holding on to each other, and it just wasn't that creative or interesting. And
this was like a rough time for Nintendo.
I don't remember much about this one.
Yeah, it was a rough time for Nintendo. I remember this was like the year where they also had that Metroid not like, was it the soccer game, or was it Federation Forces?
Oh, Federation Force, was that this year? And like also the Star Fox game that
Yeah,
people didn't
yeah,
like?
Star Fox. Yeah, that bad Star Fox game. So it was just like Nintendo really roughing it for a little bit, and maybe they were holding some stuff back because this is when they were maybe starting to look forward to the Switch or whatever. But it was bad. It was not like the reason that you don't really remember much about this game is because it's not memorable. I think the idea of having sort of almost class-based links might work, but it just didn't. It's not something that actually they followed through on very well.
It's just really a level design problem. This one, it's just not that interesting.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, this one's a blue without a doubt.
Yep.
And then there's Breath of the Wild, which another shake up to the formula, but just fantastic. I one of my favorite games of all time. And this is the one where it's like, when I do think back to The Legend of Zelda and then having this idea about a world where we're just going to throw you in and let you go out and explore, and you're going to just find a cave and you're going to go in there and see what's inside the cave, just like a kid would. This game is the Zelda game that most captures that since the original Legend of Zelda. And I think that's it was so refreshing at the time, but it also holds up because it just plays well, and it's great controls. It looks great. The world feels like this vast open place that almost feels randomly generated, but every time you go over a hill, there's always just something to find. There's always something happening, and even a lot of times it was something small. And I get a lot of people are like, "Oh, there's nothing in this world," because a lot of people are like, "Oh, Korok seeds don't count" or whatever. But for me, it was just like every little nook and cranny had something that I was interested in, and it just has absolutely clicked with me. And really also the chemistry system and having these systems where you could just make things happen in the world. You could come up with an idea and execute on it. It was like taking like that moment where I solved the second dungeon, Link's Awakening, where I'm like, oh, this is how puzzles work. This is the game teaching me something and telling me to use it in the dungeon. Breath of the Wild was like, oh, we're going to teach you something and let you use it whenever you want throughout the world to solve anything. And we're not even going to know that it's possible, but it is possible, and you could figure it out on your own. And it just felt like such an evolution of that I fell in love with this game. I'm still in love with it. I cannot wait for Breath of the Wild too.
Yeah. This was a game that felt like a very big deal, right? And it seemed like something everybody was playing. It's such a fun open world game, and it's like become the open world game. And we're seeing other people really take inspiration from this. And even still, none of them have really been able to quite capture what made this work so well. It was shocking to have this come from Nintendo, especially because this was right after that really rough period you were talking about, where it seemed like a lot of their ideas seemed misguided, and this one just everything here pretty much worked.
Yep. And I the negatives are the last boss is disappointing.
I don't like last boss, and I just because I like dungeons so much, I kind of wish that there was something more like the divine beasts, which are kind of that. I could maybe go for a few more dungeons, but the pluses are so ridiculously good.
Yeah.
Just the chemistry system in the world itself, and even I know some people don't like the weapon durability. I thought that was a big part of what made this fun. How that just made you approach things very differently.
Yeah, you just weapons are disposable, and so that means whenever you go to a camp and you find something new, you're like, oh, I will just actually use this right now and feel fine about that. I don't have to necessarily worry about holding on to it because I'm just going to find something else next time. And
some people were just couldn't get over the old way of thinking about it. I get it. I get it. You're like, oh, but I have the Master Sword, and that's the new best sword, and that's the sword I'm going to use. It's like, well, that's not what you're supposed to do here, and it really kind of shakes things up. It makes things interesting, and again, especially after a bit, you're not at a point where you're going to be out of weapons, and everybody has a weapon that you can pick up and use. So, but now it's an old debate at this point, but I do not think it's a minus.
Yeah, and I also like that you can't climb the walls in the rain. I like that there is a game that exists that pushes against you, and it's not just it's not like, oh, it's not just an obstacle, and here eventually you're going to be able to solve it if you're clever enough. Sometimes the game world is just going to be like, no, go do something else. If you can't figure this out, go do something else. And by pushing back against you, it forces you either to get creative or to go look for other things to do. And I don't know. To me, I think that it's part of this whole world working as a cohesive whole where there is always something else to do. There is another way to look. And if you want to go prepare for this journey now and come up with ways to get up there without having to necessarily climb, go do that instead. Now, again, people just want to get to the goal. But for me, game worlds that push against you are rare, and this one did it really well. I really appreciate that.
Just literally push against you by like, here's a level 500 enemy that you can't beat yet. So
exactly. Yes. Right. Yes. Yeah. Just a bigger obstacle. Yeah. That's not the same thing. Yeah, but it's definitely a gold tier game. Absolutely.
We made a big F.
What's that? What?
We made a big F.
We did make a big F. That's a big thick F. That's a yeah. Yeah, it's a fat
That's the grade I give this franchise.
All right, Mike. I'm pretty happy with this. Do you want to make any shifts? Move anything up? Move anything down?
No, especially now that I think it's funny that it looks like an F.
Yeah, we can't mess that up now. Yeah.
So, want me to go through what we got here?
I do want you to go through what we got here. Yeah, let's go.
All right. In our top tier of gold, we have Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, The Wind Waker. The Wind Waker itself is so cool, by the way. A freaking magical baton. Oh yeah,
controlling it with the stick. Yeah.
A Link Between Worlds, and Breath of the Wild. In silver, we have the original Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and the Minish Cap. In purple, we have Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, Majora's Mask, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword. In red, we have the Adventures of Link, Four Swords, and Four Swords Adventure. And in blue, we have Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, and Triforce Heroes.
Yep, that looks pretty good to me. And I mean, both of the gold and the silver tier, just all-time classic games.
Those are all Zelda games I can happily play whenever, basically.
Even purple, like I would play any of those games. I think, yeah,
no, you're right. Yeah, it's not until red or blue where it's like, yeah, I'm good on that.
Yeah, and I also want to give the Adventures Link another try, so maybe I'll do that.
Adventures Link is definitely the best in the red tier.
Yeah, and I should play that with a guide, right? Is that what everyone says? I should just play it with a guide.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Play with a guide. Play it with save states. Like try to be like use your save states. Like, okay, well, I'm starting a dungeon. I'll use a save state here. Or I'm like, I did a big checkpoint. Don't do it like every time you go into a room.
Right.
But yeah, you know, just get through the game because it's fun.
Cool. All right, Mike. Well, I feel pretty good about this list. Let's go ahead and get out of here until next time. We'll have another tier list here pretty soon. But for now, we're going to say goodbye to you good folk. Mike, let's say goodbye, right?
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back with something fun soon.
Until then, have a good one. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Bye.